Hey, tolerators, this is To All the Men I've Tolerated Before with Natalie Katona, your weekly look at everyday misogyny. This week, we're going to be having some fun with new guest Brianna McCobb. Brianna is the author of the book, The Red Flags I've Repeatedly Ignored, and the book is a candid look at her dating past and, more importantly, dating mistakes. So relatable. Kind of what the podcast started to be all about. And we're going to be talking with her today about why we ignore red flags. So, hi, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Like I said, I've been looking forward to this all week, all month, actually. So thank you.
Oh my gosh, that means so much to me. We became instant friends on the pre-call. I've also been so excited. This is the best break from moving you could ever have.
Well, I'm honored. So thank you.
So, since you're new, go ahead and give the audience a little getting to know you synopsis about you.
I'm Brianna, but I love being called Brie. I'm a Jersey girl, born and raised. I'm 30. So I work in marketing. I'm a professor. I do that part time, and then I'm an author. So I wrote this book, The Red Flags I've Repeatedly Ignored. And essentially, what it boils down to is I'm a very career oriented, very driven woman, and I make a lot of rational decisions, right, when it comes to my professional life and accolades. But there was this really stark contrast when it came to the decisions I was making in terms of the men that I was choosing to date. And I couldn't quite understand it. And each relationship, this book follows my journey of my late teens to my late 20s. So spanning nearly a decade of just how my relationships got progressively more chaotic, more unhealthy, more toxic, without being cliche, and just unhealthy really when it came to what I was willing to tolerate. So to all of the men that I've tolerated. And I needed to take a step back because I reached a point and a moment in my late 20s where it was borderline scary how I was behaving, acting, the thoughts that I was having, the way that I was viewing myself was so low. And it got to a point where I had to take a step back. I had to go to therapy and I had to say, what is going on here? Because I feel like I'm living two totally different lives, right? Like 9 to 5, again, super rational. My 5 to 9, irrational, chaotic, sporadic, made absolutely no sense. But it did when I started kind of digging deeper. So I wrote this book to help myself heal, but then to also help others. So it's structured almost like a memoir, but it's really more of a self-help book where throughout all of my stories with a particular ex or just a fling at the time, I call out red flags and all of the signs that I saw. I blatantly saw them and I never dismissed the fact that I didn't see them, but I go through what I should have done, what I forgive myself for, what I'll do if it happens again, what is the self-love lesson, and what can I forgive myself for. So there's nearly 3 dozen of those throughout the book, and then I call out red flags in myself. So it's kind of this roadmap to self-love. I dedicated it, mostly to myself, but then I realized there's so many other women out there like me. So in a nutshell, that's who I am, and that's what the book's about.
And number one, we love therapy. We love loving ourselves. It's amazing how often I end up either on this mic or off this mic talking about how even when I knew that the flag was red and blinking and screaming at me, my gut reaction was just to make nice. And it's like, what is it? Because I'm currently frustrated because of or not the Love is Blind, the Love Island reunion, because we've gotten to this point where everything is so public, so blown, so whatever, that I'm like, damn, women can't do anything right. If she had called him a red flag, it would have been like, you're being mean, you're jumping. Like things I've heard for myself is like, you're not giving the relationship a chance. You're not giving him a chance to prove himself. Like, well, maybe he was having a bad day. Maybe he was having a bad time. Have you ever considered him in this at all? And it's like, how often do I have to consider people who aren't considering how they're treating me at all?
Yeah, I can't I didn't watch Love Island because there was way too many episodes for me,
So
but
many
what I
episodes.
but I feel like I kind of missed the social mark there. But what I can say is even Love is Blind, it's funny because they'll call out red flags. Like these women in their interviews will say, "Oh, AD in Love is Blind. Oh, I'll just paint my nails red to match the red flag." And it's almost like they're making hilarity behind it when there's serious, blatant warning and danger signs ahead. But I guess for the purposes of entertainment, people are really diminishing what a red flag is and then almost making it seem like it's okay to proceed because it makes for good television, which is not a good message to be sending to people. And I can only imagine that's in Love Island. So, yeah.
Well, in reality TV aside, one of my big pain points recently is it's always on me to endure, which means that every red flag that is handed to me or presented to me is like my mountain to overcome. It's like, well, if only you let go of what you feel like is important, or if only you were a little bit more understanding. And at no point is anyone asking the delivery guy of the red flag to self reflect? We've completely missed the mark on, like, it's my responsibility to decide how I'm going to date and how I'm going to be chosen, how I'm going to choose to be loved until it's not going perfectly and I have a problem with about it. And then a million women are going to tell me, like, I don't know, just like have more empathy for whatever could be going on with him.
Yeah, I think this is there's a lot of factors that are why we see red flags but ignore them. So I guess let's just like dive into it, right? So but at its core, so I feel like we need to educate people and my cat is saying hello. Sorry.
Hello.
He's so sweet. He's like, I need love, mom. So a red flag, again, it's this warning sign, and it's been around for centuries. It's not a new phenomenon, but it's definitely been again sensationalized, I think, with social media in a good but also toxic way. And it's a this symbol that just something isn't right. Whether that means something based on your values, your morals, your beliefs, just an ick, really. But it's different from a deal breaker, which a deal breaker should be a non-negotiable. Once you see a deal breaker, this person should not be able to swim in your dating pool. Like they're getting kicked out, they're booted out, the lifeguard has taken them out of the pool, they're no longer welcome. So it's really important, and it's something that I uncovered when I was writing this book, that at some point I didn't have any deal breakers, which was a really unhealthy situation to be in. So whereas a deal breaker should be, they're in active addiction and they're not seeking any help and it's becoming very dangerous, or they have out of control anger problems, or they're incredibly abusive on emotional, physical, mental levels, or they're just incredibly possessive or jealous. Like these should be blaring deal breakers that you should not even entertain. Yet we're also seeing these being glamorized on television, right? And in society as a whole. Now, when it comes to red flags, so that's something that people on a basis need to really identify because you need to know who you are first. So a red flag could be, or even a deal breaker, really, maybe you don't want kids, and maybe you find yourself though, and you know this for a fact, like you don't want kids, but you find yourself on a date number 8 or 9 with somebody who is adamant about starting a family. There's a clear disconnect there. So what is happening, right? So I think a lot of things go into the rationale behind why we establish something as being a red flag, yet we decide to move forward regardless. So one big thing that you mentioned, and I really like, is I do feel like there's this sense of women and people in general, but I will say women. I feel like they feel as if they call out a red flag, maybe they're crazy or they're over exaggerating, or they're being too sensitive or they're too emotional, and it's just, why are you blowing this out of proportion? And it becomes minimized to, well, women are just too sensitive and too emotional, and why are you hyper fixating on that when there's so many other great things happening? But then that also starts to diminish, like, your gut instinct, right? And that's telling you that this doesn't feel right. But for some reason, then you start to believe, and we're almost conditioned as a society, as women, to think like, oh, well, maybe that isn't that big of a deal. Maybe I am being a little too critical. Maybe I am, not thinking the most rationally, and I'm thinking more with my heart. So I think that in and of itself is one principle that I think a lot of women fall victim to when it comes to why we start to negate when we see a red flag.
Well, and I think so often we're taught that any sign our brain or our body or our heart could be giving us could be false. Well, and something that you brought up was that you spent some part of your dating history not having deal breakers. As a fat woman who had to use Match.com and then dating apps eventually, I didn't feel like I was owed deal breakers. I was like, well, like, I'm already going to get what I can get because I'm a plus size woman. I'm also like nerdy. I'm also funny and annoying. Men like, just like all these cliches you hear about, like, men like to be the funniest in the room. Why are you opening your mouth? I was like, I'm extroverted. I'm too much. I'm dramatic. I'm fat. This, that, and the other. I'm the person who's carrying all the deal breakers. Why I just get what I get and I don't throw a fit, basically.
That's exactly how I felt too, which is that's so sad that we viewed ourselves as deal breakers and that we didn't bring any worth to the table, and that tolerating anything was better than nothing, regardless of if the anything was completely negative in nature. That's sad. I'm sorry that you did that too.
I'm so sorry that you did that. And also, then the like, the bullshit of it all is I would be surprised when they didn't value me at all, even though I had already felt like I didn't bring any value to the date or anything. And then all of a sudden I'm shocked when it's like, oh, wait a minute. You don't actually care about me. Where I think one of the downfalls of app dating and online dating is you're just in a constant rhythm of, oh, I guess I'm getting ready for dinner. I guess I'm sitting with dinner with a stranger. I guess I'm dedicating 45 minutes to an hour of this. And you're just kind of in the motions. And you're also like, both parties are trying to make nice and not make it awkward and things like that. So then my feelings were continuously hurt whenever I'm like, I'm sorry, you didn't enjoy my company? Shocking.
Yeah. I think so. There's this formula I came up with. It's called root. So it's the root cause of why we ignore red flags. So we can go into all of them if you want, but the R is rom coms and other forms of entertainment. The O is obsolete self love, which you literally just nailed on the head. The other one is oppression of trauma. And then T is the pressure of society in terms of timing. But I think when you don't have, I know actually, when you don't have self love and you don't have self worth, you don't know how to treat yourself, therefore you don't set the boundary or the benchmark for how others should treat you. So as sad as this is going to sound, I was also bullied. I was very overweight, and I just started to internalize all of the negative sentiments that people would say to me at a young age, and I would start to spew back to myself every day as I looked in the mirror. You're fat, your boobs are uneven, no one's gonna love you, your face, you got wrinkles, you got acne, everything that they would tell me. I would then start to tell myself daily. I became the biggest bully to myself. So that when it came from others, I was just like, yeah, I've said worse to myself. It's not even that serious anymore, which is kind of a sad predicament to be in. So when you start to actually believe that, and yet you put yourself out in the dating pool, it's almost crazy to think that you're going to accept anything that's healthy because you're not even going to think you're worthy of it. So when you don't have self love, and it's a very hard thing to come by, it takes a lot of time, and it's going to be a forever work in progress. But when you don't have that, you really should not put yourself out there and start dating because it's just you're setting yourself up for failure. So that's a critical item.
I love the formula, the root of why we and I love that the first one is rom-coms because I'm a known rom-com hater because Eventually, I was like, the stories aren't even that good and or thrilling. I'm a horror girly. I love a scary
Same.
movie. Oh my gosh.
Same.
The whole thing about rom coms and then the whole way that they advertise and write television for young women is no matter what you could be doing, if it doesn't align with what that man wants or thinks that he wants or the formula that he already has in his head, that means you're at fault. Like, I grew up in the generation that was like, oh my God, I can't wait to meet my Corey and be the Topanga that I've always wanted to be.
Yes.
And then number one, I didn't even watch The Real Boy Meets World. I watched the spinoff Girl Meets World. And I'm like, Corey Matthews needs to rot in hell. Like, literally blocks Topanga at any and all goals that she could ever want for her own life. Then tells her she's not pretty enough. But then when she does get hot, he's like, what are you doing to me? Like, it's always about him.
I never watched Boy Meets World.
Oh
I
my
know I'm the
God, good for
worst.
you. It didn't
I'm the
poison your
worst.
brain. But did you watch
I'm
Dawson's Creek? Because that one did.
Oh, I am the worst when it comes. It's funny. Like I've watched my span of rom-coms is like the 90s movies really, but when it comes to TV shows, I stick to like South Park. But that's but I can indulge here and there. But I totally understand what you're saying because there's a formula because it's proven to work. It's proven that viewers are going to want to consume it even more. But essentially what they're doing is they're just programming you to think at a young age, right? So you're watching the first time, actually, one research article showed that if you're watching any type of cartoon, a Disney cartoon, and you were a kid, it wasn't until the introduction of Snow White that there was a female lead. So until Snow White, females only existed as like a counterpart or kind of like an accomplice to you had the Minnie to the Mickey, you had the Olive Oyl to the Popeye, but there was no real strong female lead. So growing up, this is becoming ingrained in your brain that the female is just the accomplice to the male. Then when you start to evolve and you start to kind of dabble into those rom-coms or just movies as a whole, it's all based on like Never Been Kissed with Drew Barrymore. I always use this, but it's about this woman who, she was the nerd, she was the dork, she's never been kissed, and she's vying for a male's attention. And it's always this silly little formula of women vying for a male's attention. And then she ends up ignoring all of these red flags. I mean, she falls in love with her English teacher, even though she's undercover and she's of age, and he's falling in love with her. I mean, it's a mess. Like, it's actually a mess. But I mean, people eat, they eat it up. But the problem is that when you watch this and you think it's just for shits and giggles, but at the end of the day, these messages are being constantly pounded into your brain, thinking that this is what's normal.
Well, because it's almost like, and again, this is when it stops in a rom com. We never think beyond, oh, I got chosen. It was finally my turn to be chosen. I get to be the bride or the long term girlfriend or the lady that he's introducing to his mom. It's finally me. And if we're always in this like depleted, I'm just waiting to be chosen, thank goodness it's always me mindset, I was probably in my upper 20s before I actually sat down and wrote out, this is what I would actually like in a partner. I had never considered who the other person would be or how they would behave or act. Because in my mind, I was like, again, I'm not due that. Like, they just have to choose me despite everything that we know about me.
As if you have no power to do the choosing yourself, which is it's something that I think so many women particularly struggle with because we just think we have to be chosen, right? Like we need to be the bride. We need to have these celebrations. It's this immaculate celebration of matrimony, us, stepping into being the missus and taking someone else's last name. And it's beautiful. Don't get me wrong, it's beautiful. I'm not being a hater, but you have just as much power to choose who is going to be your counterpart. So that gets lost. And that's crazy because even you saying that, never once did I have a list of, this is what I ideally want my partner, to have. Every time I went on a date, it was never, how did I feel about that person? It was more, I hope they liked me. I hope I said something. Do you think they're going to ask me on a second date? Whereas, what if I don't want to go on a second date with that person? But here I am wondering, do they want to go on a date with me? Why am I giving them the power?
Well, and because, we just experienced Rat Boy Summer, where rat boys across the nation were getting bombshells left and right. And I was like, he has a bad personality and he looks like he smells bad. And yet, and yet he's getting dates. And
Yeah.
there's this phenomenon where it's like, I know that I myself settled because I was finally chosen. So I know that I'm settling and I'm ignoring all of these red flags that probably bother me, that I probably call my best friend and bitch about. Like, I've literally called my best friend and I was like, I think I'm going to end this relationship. And she was like, why? And I was like, I believe he's on the wrong side of history with how Black Lives Matter is going to go down. Like, I'm telling you that my partner is a racist. And it's like, well, do you know that for sure? Did he come on? Like,
Wait, your friend was saying that, or you were saying
well,
that to
she
yourself?
was like, well, it was both because it was the height of the pandemic. I was unemployed. I had nothing going on. I was guaranteed one free meal a week and I was already in a scarcity mindset. And I'm like talking myself because part of it is too, in my mind, if you're a racist and a homophobe and a Trump supporter and all of that, you actually don't want to be anywhere near me. So I feel like I have this invisible shield and then I'm immediately blindsided where I'm like, what the fuck did you just say? And then I have to like walk it back like, was that a one off? Were we drunk? Is that how he actually feels? Like it's crazy.
Yeah, this is where deal breakers are so important and they get lost kind of in the sauce when you're in it. But that scarcity mindset, what you said, is so damn real because when you think that there's no one else out there, when you start to kind of falsely tell yourself that this is all I'm ever going to get, this is all I'm worthy of, there's no one else out there. It's a scary dating. I mean, it is. It's scary putting yourself out there in the dating pool. Let's call it what it is. It's kind of a swamp right now. It's fine. There's some gems. There's some gems, but it's a scary. But would you rather? The question it boils down to is why is it? Why are you so scared to be alone? And not you, but even me. Why was I so scared to be alone? And why was I willing to settle with whatever was being thrown my way? As opposed to sitting with myself and being with my thoughts and being in control of my life, and all of this person. That is the biggest question that like drove this whole book too, because that's scary to think that you would rather settle, you know?
Well, and the last time I settled, he ended up, speaking of, I literally sat down and wrote exactly what I wanted because I believe in manifestation. And I believe that if you write that down, that's permanent. It has to come true. Like it seals it. So a friend was telling me about like all the duds and how often she gets duped and all this. And because she was a strong, confident woman, how many men date her literally just to take her down a peg. Like it's like a game. And I was like, oh, you should write down exactly what you want because once you write it down, you know it and then you live by it. Meanwhile, I'm dating a big fucking red flag. He's sitting right next to me. And she follows up with, well, what's on your list? So I start naming things or whatever. And I'm not kidding you. That guy dumped me that night because he's like, you want things that are so impossible for me to be. And I was like, kind, like,
I was gonna say,
considerate.
what was on the list?
Like, I did not say billionaire. Like, there are different
Oh,
apps I could be on that, but it was literally like, consider me, consider other people. Like,
my God. Yeah, that's terrifying. But funny.
he was so offended that I would have an idea of what I would want out of my life, and B, that I hadn't figured out that he wasn't it yet. However, every time I called him on not being it, it was the same old game of I'm trying really hard. And I feel like the trying really hard becomes almost a red flag in it of itself because It's almost like you're not allowed to dump them if they're continuously telling you they're trying.
Yeah, that's hard. That's a hard kind of line to teeter on because no one is perfect. And I actually have a friend right now who's in, I would say, a relatively healthy relationship, but in all relationships, you go through bumps. And I think the partner lost a job and the job market's a little iffy right now. And this person has inherently become a little lazy and given up. And my friend is like, I don't know when to call it quits. So I think there's going to be a lot of situations that are thrown at you. Whether or not your partner is saying like, I'm trying. Like, I think you have to kind of reach your own breaking point. Give somebody grace because I think you would want grace in that situation. But I do think sometimes it's hard to ask somebody to change if they showed you otherwise. I actually think it's not your right to ask somebody to change. You should probably take them at face value. But again, if there's some kind of like circumstance or experience or something really hard going on where your partner is kind of going through it, not in your case, but the case of my friend, I think it's like have some grace. But if you notice kind of this is becoming more of a inherently who they are, then it's time to really throw up the white flag maybe and like walk away and then see where it comes and goes. But that's hard, and I do think if they keep saying, "I'm trying," at a certain point, you have to just sit with yourself and say, "But are they really? Like, what are they doing to know that they're trying? What are they doing?"
Again, because I can't ever take my own advice. When my friends tell me, "Oh, but he's trying," I always volley back with, "And what does that look like?" And then when they can't answer me, I'm like, "Oh, it literally ends at, I'm sorry, I'm trying so hard." Like, that's what it looks like. And I think also what gets us all trapped, like tripped up in like, well, who cares if he's mean to waiters, or who cares
Oh
if
no! Oh
exactly.
no!
I'm like, if he can be mean to a waiter that he has to interact with for possibly 45 minutes sporadically, then he's going to be mean to you one day. Like, that's what ends up happening. But I I think that we get caught up in the sunk cost like fallacy, where it's like, I've already put in a year, or I've been doing this for 3 months. All of a sudden I'm picky, or I need you to be acting different, or things like that. And my friend and I talk about that all the time, about how like eventually it does not matter how long you've been with a person. If it's done, it's done. It doesn't matter how long you've been at a job. If it's done, it's done. An area. I had a friend recently go through a divorce, and she was like, I've known him for 22 years and he's been my person for 22 years. And I was like, but he doesn't have to be your person for the rest of your life.
You have to realize too, take away the title of romantic. There's relationships that you kind of phase out of. There's friends that I was best friends with in elementary school all the way through high school. And then we kind of just go down different paths. And it's okay to embrace that person for what they are, cherish them and value them. And you can end on like a healthy note. And maybe if your paths cross again, you can reconsider it. But just look at any type of relationship you have in your life. They're not always there. They're not permanent. And I think that's part of the beauty of life. But when you add on the title romantic, and I think especially as a female, this is going to the T of the pressure of society and timing, there's that pressure that, again, you need to get married. And the average age is like 28 for women to get married, I believe. And then, the average cost of like a bachelorette party is like $1,000. So you have all of these people just like blowing money. And when you get to a point where you're always the bridesmaid and never the bride, aka me, at some point you become it starts to become like a why haven't I been chosen? So it's all of these factors that like intertwine, right? But so I think people stay in relationships much longer than they need to because they feel like they need to fulfill the role of being, dating someone to the point of becoming a bride and then becoming a wife. And then what's the next step after that? Becoming a mother. So you almost like hand in your identity to then take on this other identity that's not you just because you feel like you need to because it's like pushed down on you. So but then you're in it, you look back just like your friend 20 years and you're like, what the fuck did I just do? Why did I dedicate 20 years of my life? And maybe this person realized year 4, like, I'm seeing some things that really aren't driving. Maybe we tried couples counseling and it's not working. And then they're just like, oh, well, I'm in it. I'm in it for the long haul. And then year 20, you're like, yeah, I'm finally like filing for a divorce. Like that's a terrible cycle and mindset to be in. Like if something just isn't working and you exhausted it and you tried your all, like hang up the towel. It's okay.
Hang up the towel. Like I'm going through a move, and everything about moving is scary. You end up in a new location. I'm actually ending up in an old location where I have a lot of baggage and a lot of fucking feelings. Like literally, I'm going to be driving past triggers all day, every day. Lucky me. And finally, and it's only within the past like 2 to 3 years, my best friend and I started saying something like, it can be today, but today doesn't have to be forever. Like, take the job because you need a job. Job doesn't have to be forever. Like, reset your whole life, pack up your house and move. That also doesn't have to be forever. Like, if you get in a situation and you don't like it, I feel like, well, number one, there's so much that goes into why, if I'm married as a woman, I don't feel like the right to leave. And it's mostly like monetary and
Yeah, I was gonna
like,
say it becomes a convoluted, collateral with the house, then you have the finances. I mean, it becomes a web. So it's hard.
and so many women have told me, like, I left when I could afford to, or like, I left when it felt like too big that it didn't even matter that I was going to be broke or whatever. And again, that all plays into the misogynistic patriarchal society that keeps us scared of not being chosen and then keeps us scared about failing at being chosen once we're chosen. Like, oh, I fucked it up. Like, I gave away my entire youth to be chosen, and at the end of the day, still managed to fuck it up.
I Yeah, I mean, that's spot on.
Yep.
I don't even know. I'm just like, yep,
Yep. Well,
bravo.
good for me. Nailed it.
Yeah, I think, I guess one comment I would say though is like, I think everybody, there's different paths for everyone. So some people, they do want to be a housewife, or some people do want to be a mom, and some people want to be single and just like, do their own things. Some people maybe want to explore different types of relationships. So whatever you feel is like, again, for you, feel free to peruse and feel free to go after, and you don't have to feel constrained to a box. And there's so many different perspectives out there, but at the end of the day, you always have to put yourself first. So I don't know, I think that what a lot of women do, and this is just my belief, but I also come from like I'm a very hardworking person, and I never want to rely on anyone for anything, I guess, given my own traumas and upbringings. But I do think a lot of women, they fail to continue to be themselves, and they fail to continue to provide for themselves, and they become very dependent as opposed to interdependent. And I also feel like, you should equally contribute in some way, but you should always be contributing to yourself. So you should have a contingency plan also. Like there's just so many things I feel, but you should always have like a backup plan just in case. Like you never know what's going to happen in life. So I just like to be safe, you know.
Yes. No, and I think, like, God, and this is probably why I just like bowed out of motherhood and marriage to begin with, because I was like, okay, so then I'm going to be married and I have to have a contingency plan because you can't count on nobody. And
Well, the data doesn't lie though. I mean,
yeah,
50% of marriages end in divorce, and then subsequently, I think second divorces, it like skyrockets. Like their chances are like 60 to 70% of that ending in divorce. So it's not like I'm being a pessimistic, a sour Sally over here. It's just that is the fact. And then yeah, and then there's just the people who are in a relationship unhappily, or maybe staying, even though you don't know what goes on behind closed doors. But it's just you're the premise of a marriage, if you go back to its roots, was like a political play. It was to like, I'm gonna do this, our family's going to expand, you're gonna get land. There was dowries involved. It was this whole big thing, but it was all like, it was a business arrangement at the end of the day. So if you're going to open a business or you're going to, sell a house, like you have a plan in place. And I just think people go into marriage, which is a big freaking monumental move to do in your life. And you don't go in with like any type of backup plan or any type of like in your mind, like that. It's just a little crazy to me. But that's just me.
So then I gotta have a backup plan because you can't rely on nobody. I say that all the time. I'm like, you can't trust nobody. You can't. And then I have 2 to 3 kids. So now we're also making the choice of, can we afford daycare? Whose career takes the back seat if we can't afford daycare? Daycare is astronomical.
It's insane.
It's insane. Someone, my best friend, broke down how much she spends on fucking summer camp when those children aren't in school. And I was like, oh my God, we need year round school then. Insane.
I don't know how people, that's a conversation for another day, but
yeah.
God bless everybody who has children and are thriving in this economy, because I am just a single cat mom over here. And like, there's some pay periods where it's like a struggle. So
yeah.
I don't know.
And
bless their hearts.
So now I got 2 to 3 kids, and it's like, whose career is taking the hit? Whose 401k is taking the hit? I'm supposed to be relying on you as a partner that this is going to work out for me if I sink some years out of my career into these kids and start to let my plan B slide. It's like, it's a mind fuck, and it's a system where, again, I'm like, God, I have to have 10 things in the air at all times, plus also realizing I'm not happy.
Yeah. And I think that's also the problem too, is once you start to enter a relationship, people put themselves on the back burner and they start to put their partner on the pedestal. So it becomes in order of importance, really, your partner, the relationship, and then you. Now add on factors of having a house, then add on factors of having children, multiple children, add on factors of having a job, add on factors of having pets. You start to notice that you yourself, a lot of the times, sink to the bottom, which becomes a very unhealthy and unbalanced type of structure to live in. So it's going to collapse at some point. But I think that's a big thing inherently. Again, that happens to a lot of women because you assume the role of becoming the bride, becoming the wife, becoming the mom, and that is your identity, right? Again, you lose yourself. So I think that becomes a big problem. And I think at a certain point, you just kind of lose it.
There was a big period in time where I was watching The Real Housewives of Potomac just all day, every day, just like binging it. And, The Real Housewives, give it up to that fucking franchise. You end up getting to know people for 15 to 25 years. I've watched babies be born. It's the same with it's the same with fucking sister wives. I'm a part of their family, they're a part of my family. And and finally, I just had to become unglued about these husbands of Potomac, because what was clearly starting to happen is season 1, those women were dedicated to being housewives and making sure that whatever he wanted to be happy was happening or whatever. And we talked about it on our Housewives episode with Chris DeRosa, who produces for The Real Housewives, about how then all of a sudden those women are getting hair care lines or clothing brands or brand deals themselves or going back to acting or whatnot. And I said, almost as a joke, but honestly, I was like, yeah, because they have to have their plan B for when they're ready to divorce him because his money doesn't matter anymore. I've got my own. And he was like, no, but for real, it's their escape hatch. And you could watch in real time these men start to grow so insecure because it was like they were losing, oh my God, if she has her own money and she doesn't need my money, what's actually keeping her making sure that my life is taken care of? And I never have to think that hard emotionally or mentally about anything that could be going on in our lives. And they became so mean, just so mean and resentful. And I was like, someone needs to call these husbands out, because these women, despite the fact that they don't need you or your money for whatever, still feel attached to you and you're mean as sin. And I would tell my friend to start packing her bags.
Yeah. I mean, that's good that they started with their plan B. I don't know, it's weird. I mean, if I was to ever get married, I think I would prefer to find someone who's an equal to me. I wouldn't want to make more than the person. I don't think I'd want them to make more than me. Like I'd kind of want to be on like a super equal playing field. I definitely would want someone to sign a prenup for me, and then I'd sign one for them. That's just my belief because I don't like somebody having power over me. I just want it to be like a super equal playing field. But there are people who might think I'm crazy for saying that, and that's okay. We all have different beliefs, but I just think again, it's good to go into something like knowing there's you need a plan B at all times for all things in life. You know, your job is great today, it could be terrible tomorrow. Your relationship could be great today, terrible tomorrow. I just think life is so unpredictable that it's just almost asinine to not just have something in your back pocket. Like just some kind of fallback plan, just in case. You never know.
I think I just realized one of my new red flags. And now a red flag is going to be like people who think that capitalism doesn't have a negative effect or a toxic effect at all on the way that we express love to our partners and our families, because it's like the wedding industry is a capitalistic nightmare.
Dude, I don't want to be asked respectfully. I have so many friends, but I'm like, please stop asking me to be in your wedding. Like, I really just want to be a guest. I'm like, because
Right.
this is it's
It's
crazy, and
crazy.
it's crazy. I cannot stand the wedding industry. I'm like ready to strangle the microphone.
No.
Hate it, hate it.
For as fun as I had watching Four Weddings on TLC and My Favorite Wedding with David Totera or whatever, when I was younger, I look at weddings and I'm like, literally everything about this is toxic. I'm like,
I really think though, I honestly think that a big catalyst for why it's become so fucking crazy is because of social media. And I think it's just this play, like, look how great my wedding was. I do think some people are like, oh, I want my wedding to be great, good for you. But I think a lot of the times it's just like, oh, who has the biggest and baddest wedding? And I have friends who got married 2 years ago and they still post their pictures in their feed. And I'm just like, dude, we're
dude,
good. Like,
we were there. We got it.
exactly.
Like,
But I'm like, also, if your wedding photos were like 3 grand, I'm like, you better get good use out of those. So I
yeah.
don't know.
But like, if you post one more this week, I'm gonna ask if you're on the rocks, and I might do it publicly because I'm an asshole. Like, but like the idea that like money has no effect on how we show romance and are able to sustain our relationships in this country is crazy because of what you just said. I would love to have a partner where there's no power imbalance financially, and yet we know that so much goes into play that keeps financial imbalances happening. And then, like, I just had a friend post on her stories, like, and I think it was because on Love is Blind UK, which is very boring, some guy bulked, or some woman or some guy bulked at a prenup or whatever. And it's like, when are we normalizing prenups? Why is J-Lo divorcing Ben Affleck without a prenup? Why,
If I
J-Lo?
see them in my newsfeed one more time, I'm going to lose it.
Number one, this is just for Anna de Armas because I heard that maybe you're hanging out with Ben Affleck. Everyone should be running away from Ben Affleck. He is a walking red flag.
I don't know much about him. I feel like they were both red. I mean,
They're
I don't know
both
about
red
him.
flags, but I find him to be probably the volatile of the two. Like, she's a vain red flag. Like, it's
Yeah.
probably all about her all the time. But he seems resentful, sad, and angry, and I can't be doing it. I can't be a hostage to his sad Batman routine. So run away. She's young. Anna de Armas, you are young. Run to Glen Powell. Like, literally anyone else. Like, but yeah, like, the fact that we demonize people who are just like, hey, should this fall apart, I would just like to know that at the end of the day, I'm going to be able to pay rent somewhere else and eat. And it's because neither one of us got petty. And it's again how certain people hold on to their power because they've already built in a financial imbalance for us.
I think that the conversation of prenups, it could be uncomfortable. And I do think a lot of people go into it. I mean, who goes into a marriage? I mean, you shouldn't go into a marriage hoping you get divorced. That's just a recipe for disaster. But and it's just like who goes into dating someone in the honeymoon stage thinking it's going to come crumbling down in 8 months? You just you don't know. But I think that because of that principle alone, it's just good to say like, hey, of course we don't want this to happen, but we should, maybe consider doing this just because we don't know what could happen. And I don't want you to hate me. And I want us to both be set up for success. And I think having mature conversations like that would put you in a way better position, and make you feel empowered to make a choice if you need to. But again, without hoping that happens, of course.
And I think on the emotional side of this, moving away from my number two enemy, capitalism, but on the emotional side of this, there's such a shame and embarrassment when it comes to letting a relationship end in its natural course because of the way that we talk about, like, oh, you did, like, I've walked into every therapy session after a breakup and gone, I knew better. I'm smarter than this. Just like taking all of that blame because I can just like hear the army of people behind me being like, well, you knew he wasn't a great guy, or you knew this, you knew that. And again, there's no winning. Like, I would just like to wake up one day and be like, today everyone's going to be kind to me.
I think victim blaming is a real thing too, in the sense that, especially when you're in a toxic relationship, I think a lot of women, especially, tend to stay in abusive relationships a lot of the times because people, and if you stay too long, like let's just say you're in a really abusive, like even my ex, I was with him like 2 3 years, and everybody wanted to say I told you so, but there's the outsiders who come in and they're just like, well, you knew from the beginning, like why were you stupid enough to stay? And you start to internalize like I was really stupid, but it's this victim mentality where you're just like, I should have known better, and people are going to blame the victim for staying too long, and they're not going to blame the enforcer for enforcing the behavior of, somebody becoming a victim. So it is this really weird phenomenon too that I think people are scared to kind of face, but you
Yeah.
just have to. Yeah, I
No,
mean, there's definitely a layer of accountability that you have to take because you're the one who willingly, if it's willingly, stayed in the situation. But that doesn't negate the fact that this person acted or behaved in a certain way. Like two things can be true at the same time.
yeah. And no matter how frustrated I get when a friend is being mistreated in a way that I think I would never tolerate for myself again, because I've already tolerated it. No matter how frustrated I get about it, I never allow my brain to go, and this is her fault for dealing with it, for like enduring it, for whatever.
Yeah.
Because like part of decentering like romantic relationships and your value being attached to whatever man is coming over to your house a lot is also realizing that you lived in a structure and in a society that set you up to feel like you had to stay or gave you such small parameters of leaving, like finances and safety and support and things like that.
Yeah.
So like I will not take, I will be frustrated. I will be mad. I will be sick of looking at him. I will be sick of hearing about him. I will probably tell you every day, I don't want to hear him anymore. Don't bring him to things that I'm at. But I'm never going to take it to that next level of blaming you because like my anger that I'm annoyed that I'm watching this goes down is nothing compared to you actually living it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And one thing I realized too is it's very easy when you're on the outside to point fingers and say, what are you doing? Why are you staying with this person? This person is clearly very unhealthy for you. But now take that person out of the equation and put yourself in there, which is what happened to me. I would have all of my best friends look at me and say, why are you with this person? This person clearly doesn't love you the way that you think. They don't value you. They don't cherish you. You're crying every freaking day. Like, what are you doing? But for whatever reason, a compounding of all of these factors that I just didn't heal, I stayed. But now, again, take myself out of that and now plot my best friend in there. I would look at my best friend and say, like, bitch, what are you doing? But
Mm-hmm.
again, it's easy when you're not in it, to be able to say that. So I think, again, it's having grace for someone because you don't know what motivated them to, find this person attractive in the first place. You don't understand what they're going through mentally. You don't understand what maybe they don't even know that they don't know, right? Because maybe they're on a certain point in their journey. So it's just understanding and kind of opening your perspective, but being able to offer advice if the person wants advice and letting people kind of go down a journey that they're meant to go down for whatever reason. But I don't know. It depends on like your level too. But I never blame someone for staying in a relationship. I do try to have grace. But it is concerning if it's like physically or sexually abusive. Like I think then you can start to like intervene more seriously to like just make sure they're safe. But to blame them easy for staying. I mean, people stay in abusive relationships. It takes them like 8 or 9 times to finally leave. So there's a psychological phenomenon that goes on when you're in a really unhealthy relationship that people, I don't think, understand
Yeah.
unless they experience it themselves.
People should have watched Lifetime more often, like I was doing in the second
I love
grade.
Lifetime.
Like,
It's the best.
just true crime and Lifetime setting me up for how I was going to have to behave. Like,
I feel like we need that on a t-shirt.
um, what are some red flags that you've turned into deal breakers?
That's a good one. One would definitely be, this is more of a personal one. Actually, I'm going to call out like personal ones, but it takes two to tango if you're in a relationship. So the first one is if I ever feel the need to go through my partner's phone because I think they're like hiding something or sneaking something around, if they're doing something and then I actually find, I will never go through someone's phone again. I have done it, but red flag in and of itself, invading someone's privacy. But if I feel like I just can't trust you and I really have that urge to like start looking through your phone, we're done. Like we're done. I don't want to play games. I don't want to do that. I don't want to invade someone's privacy and I just don't want to go snooping. So that's a big red flag slash deal breaker now for me. Um, Another one would be there were plenty of times where I lied to my family and friends about who I was dating, or I hid certain things that were happening, or I only chose to share certain details, or maybe they knew about someone I once dated and I lied and said that I wasn't dating them now. And they were in complete and utter secrecy because I was embarrassed and ashamed to say to them that this is what I was putting up with. If that ever crosses my way again, that's a red flag, and a deal breaker. You should not be with someone who you're scared to share with your friends and family you're dating, or scared or share a fact of like what potentially is happening that's really unhealthy. So that's a huge deal breaker for me now.
Yeah. One of the red flags that I've now made just like a point blank deal breaker to the point where I don't even want to hang out with your partner if I have to watch this happen is I can no longer be doing it where someone is getting accolades or attention or laughs or whatever and you immediately have to put that person down or
Oh no.
you immediately have to throw a fit, you start pouting, you start holding us all hostage with your insecurity tantrum or whatever. You're mean and you're insecure and insecure people are going to punch my walls and then I can't afford to fix that. Like I
Yeah.
I can't be doing it. And I also will not let you dictate how I'm supposed to feel about myself. Like don't you
Ooh,
feel
that's a good one.
stupid? And another one, and I think it's because of how joy is weaponized against women so often, is I will not tolerate someone putting down someone's joy, like their hobby, their passion, their love. Like I'm a cat lady who loves Taylor Swift. I am made a fool of every day. I am the butt of millions of jokes. I have a vice presidential candidate who said I was the scum of our population. And it's the fact that, like, I find it to be the biggest red flag if you see so many people enjoying something like a Chappell Roan concert and you immediately have to say something mean about her and how her music isn't classy enough, or she's putting on too many airs, or Taylor Swift's too successful for her own good or whatever. It's like, no, I'm not tolerating that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a Swiftie, but I'm like a diehard Adam Sandler fan. Like I have Adam Sandler everywhere in my freaking apartment.
Yes.
I can't date someone who just constantly be like, "Oh, he's corny," or like putting down things that I find joy in. What are you contributing to my life? That brings me joy. Why are you going to knock it down? So
Yeah.
that's a huge red
Huge.
flag.
Yeah, we've had an episode on like weaponized joy and how it like comes down to like girlhood is always so looked down upon. I mean, I've had men who have watched their kid be handed a popsicle and had to say out loud, "Why did you take the pink girly popsicle?" And it's like, bitch, he just likes the flavor raspberry. Like,
I
it's
can't.
unnecessary.
It's just I don't like killjoys. That's
No.
just somebody life is too short to be
Then
putting up with that.
then I gotta start screaming about how stupid it is that we've genderized colors to begin
Popsicle
with.
sticks.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
popsicle sticks. And then 3-year-olds are looking at me as I'm like, popsicles don't have genders. Okay, that's not something that happens. You can be a boy, you can be whatever, and like the flavor raspberry. I don't give a shit. That was an inappropriate comment. Like, I can't be doing it. I cannot be doing it. And it's the real, like, I'm insecure to the point of pettiness and to the point of if I'm not being celebrated, no one's being celebrated for me because it's mean. It's just mean
It is.
spirited.
It's bully behavior for no
Yes.
reason. One more I can think of is so communication is big to me, and interestingly enough, when I was, going to therapy and still am, I thought to myself, I'm a writer, I'm a beautiful communicator. But what I did uncover is when things become uncomfortable, sometimes I'm not the best at communicating, or sometimes I do shut down. So there's work to do there. But I do say that to say that I can understand if people have work to do when it comes to communication, but if something ever escalates to the point where you're yelling, I will not put up with that. So out of control anger problems, or someone who just yells and cannot talk when there's some kind of like disagreement or conflict, I will not tolerate that. I think that's also something, it's like a trigger for me, just given things that I grew up with, in my early childhood. But I just think at the end of the day, incredibly disrespectful, incredibly immature, and just unhealthy. So that's something I would never ever put up with. And
Oh.
unfortunately I did.
Oh yeah. I have also been yelled at over the tiniest to the biggest of things. And it's like, what are we doing? Sir, this is a Chili's. Why are we yelling? Like, just get your
Not
baby
the
back.
chills.
Julia Washington, who collaborates on this podcast a lot, and I refer to Chili's as the white people haven. That's where white
I
people
love
feel the
chilies.
safest. Exactly. And do you feel
Ugh.
safe at the Chili's? Yes.
Oh, yes, of course I do.
Of course.
The quesadilla explosion salad is like my go-to safe haven.
A triple dip and a cookie skillet. That's all I need for a good
Oh
week.
my God, not the cookies skillet.
A cookie skillet is all I need for a good week. And one of the things about the whole red flag thing is people can grow out of their own personal red flags. Like, growth is a thing, but
Yeah.
I will die on the hill that you're allowed to be exhausted to the point where there's no turning back. So, like, maybe the person is on the cusp of changing their red flag or whatever, but it's too late. It's been long-term trauma. It's been, I'm exhausted. I'm not happy, all of it. I don't believe that you have to ride out someone else's bad time if that's just leaking into that being your bad time.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. And that goes back to the principle of you should be able to take the power in your hands to say what you're willing and not willing to tolerate, what you're willing to wait for, what you're willing to accept. So I couldn't agree with you more.
The amount of times, not even the woman who has fled won't even be in the room because she's fled. And and I have to hear like, didn't even give him the chance to change. Didn't even give him credit that he changed, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, because we're tired. Like, I'm tired. Like,
I think it depends on what it is. Like, I think it's all based on context. So I can't really say. But, like, going back to the example of my friend with her partner
yeah,
who's lost a job and has become lazy and just, I think you can wait for a little bit in that case. But if it becomes, you're the sole breadwinner, you're taking care of everything, and all of that responsibility is on you. I mean, that's you're in a decision to say what you want to do, and I think it really depends on the red flag at hand, how you want to
yeah.
pivot,
It's
if at
like,
all.
yeah. I also think that like part of what keeps like red flags alive and from not being taken seriously is how other people will talk about your relationship. And now you have like 50 people telling you like it's either not that bad or it's the worst that they've ever seen. Like if someone is talking about their lived experience and they're crying and they're upset and your first sentence is, I can't believe you think it's that bad. I'm like, what's wrong with you? Like we're crying.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's too much I want to say fake influence in life right now. Like you're on social, you think everything you see is real, or you think everybody really cares what you're posting. I just think, you have friends too who obviously everybody's just grounded in different things and everybody's going through life in their own ways. And I really, at the end of the day, what you have to realize is no one really cares. Like no one cares. I think, I'll leave the house sometimes with like a pimple on my chin and I'll like say to my best friend, I'm like, oh my God, I look crazy. He's like, I didn't even notice it until you said it. He's like, I don't care. And I'm like, huh, what a phenomenon. Like, you don't care how I look, but it's just, I think we hyper fixate on how we think other people look at us, but really no one's paying that much attention. It's just us projecting that we think people care that much, whether it be about our relationships or whatever. So I say this to say in a long winded way, you just have to do what is best for you. I think you could take advice because, again, there's other perspectives that are out there that you may not be considering, or there's merit in certain things that certain people say, whether or not you agree. I mean, as long as it's based in experience or facts or whatever. But I think you have to know what you want and then move accordingly. So,
Yeah. And that's so funny with the I didn't even notice the first time that my sister told us she was having my nephew. She immediately followed it up with me to, didn't you notice that I was taking like a handful of pills every day at Gen Con? And I was like, no, because I also take a handful of pills to keep me regulated. Like I was like,
yeah.
I got the B12, I got the iron, I got the antidepressant, I got the birth control. I too am just licking pills out of my hand first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
I thought everyone did it. And like, and she's like, oh, okay. And I was like, yeah, I have too much ADHD in this brain to be tracking whatever you're doing. You're not my current hyperfixation. Like,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
is because like we fall into those traps a lot, like with stay at home moms and working moms. Like, oh, stay at home moms think this about working moms and working moms think this about stay at home moms. No, you guys never think about each other because you're surviving whatever your motherhood looks like.
And it's also, think about it. I mean, I only have but so much capacity to deal with what I'm going
Yeah.
through, and then a little bit to really be there for my friends and my family. But we all go through things that no one else would ever understand because you're not in it. So to then think, oh, but people care so much about what I'm going through. No, it's just it's this fallacy, and I think we've been ingrained to believe that also because of social media. But people do not care. People do not care. And then once you realize people don't care, life becomes so much freer. You just start making decisions for yourself. You start embracing all that is you because you realize no one cares except me. And it's a beautiful, uplifting, like freeing feeling.
Okay, I'm going to move us to our closing out ceremony.
Yes.
What do you think your biggest lesson has been learning about red flags and then relating them to self love and discovering how important self love is?
Yeah, I think that for a really long time, I harbored kind of what I said earlier, a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, a lot of embarrassment, and I felt really alone in a lot of the experiences that I had. And granted, they're unique to me, but when I started writing this book, and again, at first it was supposed to be a memoir, and then my publisher was like, "This, you can really transform this by making this a self-help book," which is ultimately what it is. But then the feedback that I would get from readers when they said, "Oh my God, I dated someone like a hunter," or "Oh my goodness, I had a similar experience like the guy in Ireland," and realizing that so many of us have our own lives and we're going down these journeys for the first time together, but also individually. But there's so much relatability and there's so many lessons that I think we can learn from one another, which makes it a really beautiful journey. So the one thing I realized was to really not be ashamed and to really not let these experiences anchor me down and feel like I couldn't live my authentic self because I had to kind of hide things that I've done. And there's things in the book that I share that I'm not proud of, and that's okay because we're human. But just learning to embrace my imperfectly perfect self and really embrace all of the decisions I've made, take accountability for the actions that I've done, heal through things that I thought maybe weren't the best, but I took it as a learning experience to grow. And really just being open and true to who I am, which then invites other people to come into my life and say, like, hey, I've done something similar. So it's been a really beautiful dialogue, and it's interesting because a book is usually like a one-way communication, right, where you kind of put it out and that's it. But in my experience, it's been a very open, beautiful two-way dialogue where a lot of readers have reached out, and I've built like really cool friendships or really beautiful connections with people, just sharing dating stories and learning from one another. So I would say that is the coolest thing that has happened. Just really learning to embrace all that is me, all that I've done, all that I've dated, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything, because it makes you you.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
yeah.
a running joke I have in my life is that in a former life, I went to school for teaching, and I'm not using my teaching license. Mm-mm. I fled teaching. So I always like make a joke of it about like, can you believe that I was in my college years going to teaching or whatever? And luckily enough, I have enough kind people near or around me who always go, yeah, but it got you here today. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's all part of it. It's all just like a step in the right or the wrong direction. And sometimes a wrong direction loops back around. Everything in Dayton, all of the Dayton suburbs are literally shaped like a fucking jelly bean. You think you're going the wrong way, and yet all of a sudden you end up in the town that you needed to be in. So sometimes the wrong direction still gets you to where you need to be.
Yeah. And then a big thing too is, again, I bullied myself for a really long time. And one of the biggest takeaways, I think, with just even just writing this book is I really learned to speak to myself with kindness and compassion and empathy. And it's built such a really strong foundation within myself. And it's it's translated into the way that I speak to others too. Not that I was mean before, but I really feel like I exude like hippie peace, and I just but it all started with me. And I think again, once you free yourself of all of those negative emotions and you just really start to coddle yourself and nurture yourself and pour love into yourself, it's going to be abundantly apparent, and it's going to, impact positively all of the other relationships you have, platonic, familial, romantic, all of the above. So
Yeah. And I think just like a lesson I want to reiterate at the end of this episode would be like, you're allowed to stick to your ick. So, like, just because it's not an ick for me, it can be an ick for you. I think we get so caught up in these words like shallow, petty, picky, like all of it. And it's like hard to please that like we're almost like we always like make allowances for our own ick and then make us believe that we ourselves are crazy for having a standard, stick to your ick. Like,
Yes. Yes. But also on top of that though, do know when to be flexible, and bend a little bit too and compromise because life is all a give and take. But absolutely, if you feel adamantly strong about one belief, I can't date someone who does X, Y, and Z. Don't let other people think you're insane for feeling that way. If you feel that way and you really feel like you can't date someone like that, go with that, move forward in that direction because it's your relationship, it's not theirs. So, whatever you want in a partner, again, you have the choice, you have the power. So, do what feels and whatever feels right for you.
your list of icks is no one's business. And a hard pill I've had to swallow is I'm not allowed to project my list of icks onto how you should be feeling. I love to poke at someone and be like, that's icky. Like, don't. And then I start using plural pronouns. I'm like, we don't fuck with that. And like the person sitting next to me is like, I actually do fuck that. Like, and I'm like, ugh, icky. Like, you don't also get to take your list. Like, there's no universal list of icks or red flags. Like, everyone gets to set their own.
I agree.
Yeah. What is something that you would like to manifest for the collective energy to help this world and misogyny and all of it just be better?
This is good. I just want to empower people to really just educate themselves and make smarter, rational decisions, not believe everything that you hear just because, and just move accordingly based on what you know and feel to be true. Like I just feel like we live in a really weird society right now. I don't necessarily like it. And I want people to feel empowered and enough to make like rational, smart decisions that benefit them. And not listen to what others are maybe feeding them to believe. I don't know. I don't know why that was top of mind, but
Well,
I'm on
it's
this
an
like social
election
media.
year.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
It's
on
an
this like
election
social
year.
media rabbit
Yeah.
hole election year. Yeah.
I think my manifestation is that everyone listening and then everyone beyond them at some point has a chance to become comfortable with themselves and being by themselves. I think that part of that timing part of the root is that we don't allow anyone to actually set their caliber of what they want and what they don't want and what makes them comfortable and what makes them uncomfortable. Because by the time I'm 14, I'm just supposed to force a partner and consider that partner and anything that they would want into my life too. So then it's very easy to start. I mean, Julia Roberts in Runaway Bride did not even know what type of eggs she actually liked to eat.
One more thing too is just I think we are all going through things. So I guess my manifestation, my prayer, whatever these listeners, believe that you heal through whatever it is that you feel is not allowing you to step into like your most full, beautiful, empowered self. I think we all have demons. We all have things that shaped us and molded us, good and bad. And sometimes those bad things can be really like demonic almost in nature and like feel like it's just a shadow that's forever following you. But
Yeah.
I do hope that whatever you're going through, that's making you feel like you're not enough, you heal through because you are enough. And I really hope you feel that way.
Yeah. And if it feels too selfish or too uncomfortable to be enough for yourself, be enough for your cat or your dog. Like every day, I just answer to Penelope. My entire emotional and mental state of mind depends on whether or not Penelope likes me or not. Maybe that's healthy. I'm not sure. Like,
Listen, one cat mom to another, same. So it's fine.
yeah, like if that bitch is mad at me, I'm on a spiral. I'm not well. Like
Same.
No, I'm like, why are you mad at me? She's so mad because I've touched all of our stuff and put it on the floor. And she's like,
Oh my gosh,
why?
how is she gonna feel moving?
She's not gonna like it, because we are staying with my dad for a bit until things in my life like even out. And he has a dog and his house is noisy, and she's never been uncomfortable a day in her existence with me. So I assume that I'm going to spend a lot of time crying and begging her to like me again.
Oh, well, I
Like,
hope it's a fast
yeah.
transition.
The problem is that we're both so codependent that when she does get nervous or whatever, she also wants me to be nervous. So she has to like look around corners to be like, excuse me, the world is ending and I would like you to act accordingly.
Yeah.
Excuse
Like,
me.
hello, mom. Yeah. What's going
Hello.
on?
And so she forces herself to like be with me even though she's worked up herself. So I'm just like, I'm just a wreck. I'm just a mess. Like people have told me so often, like, no, it's good that she feels like she can be with you when she's anxious. Like that means that she'll adjust quicker. And I'm like, right. Or she'll attack my dad's dog and I'll cry about that. I don't think that dog should be attacked. Like,
Oh.
yeah. I'm just I I don't do well with animal to animal conflict. I'm like, no, be friends. Like,
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
I wish you the best of luck in your
thank
move, and I
you.
hope that Penelope, she's okay.
She's fine. She's gonna be fine. She's gonna be fine. She's gonna have an entire room to herself. She's gonna be fine. But Brie, thank you so much. Again, the magic of the internet, no matter how dark and scary it is that I got to DM you and we got to make a connection. So thank you for being open to a connection and open to being a guest. Please let the listeners know where they can find the book, where they can find you, all of it.
You're the best. And it's so funny because I remember I emailed you and then you DM'd me. I'm like, what a small
What a
world.
small
But
world.
it's amazing. There is beauty in the internet. But thank you again. So my name is Brianna McCabe, and my book, The Red Flags I've Repeatedly Ignored, it's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Walmart as a hardcover, which is so sexy, but also a paperback for the paperback lovers, and an ebook. Audiobook is dropping soon. And if you want to stay connected, you can follow me on social media at the Brianna McCabe, and my website's thebriannamccabe.com. And I love just connecting with people. So shoot me a DM and we can become friends.
And that is all in the show notes because I would never make anything harder for you. Um, and in the show notes, you'll find the link to our Patreon that has all of our bonus material and our free blogs. You'll find the Instagram, Men I've Tolerated Pod, the TikTok, Natalie K124, and all the ways to get a hold of me. Currently, I would like people talking to me more often about Love Island or this Secret Life of Mormon Wives show that's coming up. Insane. I would just like more insane DMs about reality TV. And remember, tolerators, you don't have to smile through anything you're tolerating, including making yourself uncomfortable by throwing out your red flags because you've decided that that's what society wants you to do. Smiles are for joy.